Yes. Lamed Beis Amud Beis. Yeah, Lamed Beis Amud Beis. Halfway down the page. And this goes back to the Mishnah, the previous Mishnah. If you remember, well, previously it's on Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, which I didn't send out, but I'll just tell you what that says, if you remember. Maschil Batorah. We're on Lamed Beis Amud Beis, we're at the second wide line. And this goes back to the Mishnah on the previous Amud, which says Maschil Batorah or Mashlim Banovi. Remember, starting off, remember these psukim, which ideally there should be 10. We spoke about this wonderful shleimus, if you like, the perfection of 10. Always talk about 10 if we can. So yeah, we've got 10 psukim ideally, because remember there was a view who said you could actually, if you're really struggling, go down to 3. What was it? So we can go down to 3, but nevertheless, ideally 10, starting with the Torah. Remember, we said Mashlim Banovi, concluding with the Novi. Remember, the Ksuvim are in between. Normally it's Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim. We're taking these chronologically, so it's Torah, then all those psukim that are coming from Ksuvim, in fact, from Tehillim, that's David HaMelech, and subsequently we move on to the Nevi'im, the prophets. So, and Rabbi Yossi says, Im hishlim batorah yotza, which means if you concluded with a posuk from the Torah yotza, which sounds very much Im hishlim, it's like past tense. If you did this, you would be yotza, but it sounds like it's not ideal. Ideally, it sounds like, although, of course, we've got 10 pesukim, so it's 333. There's going to be the lucky one with a 4. Not clear where it's coming from. It sounds like from the Tanakama Mashlim Benovi. So it sounds like a bit like the 334 system. Not sure if anybody used to play that in the old days, even the current days. 334, that's what it sounds like. But Rabbi Yossi says, no, Im hishlim batorah yotza. If you concluded with the posuk of the Torah that you are yotza, sounds very much like it's not ideal. So it sounds like, according to Rabbi Yossi, it should be 3-3-3. 1 would be okay, even if you did a 3 instead of a 3-3-4, 3-3-3-1. That would be all right. But let's see the Gemara, please, gentlemen. Second wide line down. Maschil Batorah umashlim banovi. So Lamed Beis Amud Beis, second wide line down of Lamed Beis Amud Beis. If one starts with the Torah and finishes with the Novi, and we'll pick third line down now. Rabbi Yossi im hishlim batorah yotza, as we've just said, if you did conclude with the Torah, you are yotza. Says the Gemara, im hishlim. If a person did conclude with the Torah, sounds to me, says the Gemara, di'eved in lechatchila lo. This di'eved, that's like a double word, di'avad. If a person did do that in, not the word ein, in Aramaic, in means yes, lechatchila, initially, ideally, lo, that shouldn't be done. So what have we got here? We've got the view of Rabbi Yossi, which sounds like where you're talking about the 10 psukim, and of course it will be Malchus, Shofros, Malchus, Zichronos, and Shofros. It should be 3-3-3 or 3-3-4, 3 psukim from the Torah, 3 from Ksuvim, and then 3 from Nevi'im. And then Rabbi Yossi says, if you finished with 1 from the Torah, you are Yotze, which says the Gemara, the fourth wide line, Lamed Beis Amud Beis. It sounds like that's not ideal. L'chatchila lo, ideally you shouldn't do that. Is that what he really means? V'otanya Rabbi Yossi Omer, now going to the fourth line. V'otanya Rabbi, we got a brisa which says, Hamashlim b'Torah harizeh meshubach. It's actually praiseworthy if you can round up these 10 psukim, 333, with one at the end. And it sounds like that's the praiseworthy way to do things, the ideal way. Why in the Mishnah, therefore, did he say no? Im hishlim, if you finished with a posuk, he should have said the same wording. You should be mashlim, ideally. Says the Gemara, Ema, let's say there's obviously got a contradiction here. Mashlim, we're changing that word from hishlim to mashlim. Mashlim means you should finish with a posuk of the Torah. Says the Gemara, just 1 minute. That's a major change you're making there. And normally, of course, we would stick with the Mishnah versus a brisa anyway. But says the Gemara, V'ho im hishlim katoni. We've actually learned, and this is Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, who's bringing together all these Mishnayos, and the wording actually says, im hishlim, if he did conclude with the posuk from the Torah. Doesn't sound like it's ideal at all. You can't just go and change this. Says the Gemara, no, it sounds like you're changing a word. It's a major change from mashlim, or the other way around, from hishlim to mashlim. Hishlim sounds like you shouldn't normally do this. Mashlim sounds like you are. You're changing the word of a Mishnah. Normally, I say that's been the Mishnayos. If you want to add words, fine, but you can't change the whole meaning of this. Hochi ka'oma, especially if you don't want to change that verb. Says the Gemara, this is what it means. Maschil ba'Torah umashlim banovi. That was the Tanakama, starting with the Torah, concluding with the Novi. Rabbi Yossi Oisam Omer, Mashlim B'Torah. There were some words missing in the Mishnah, and we're not changing the verb. We're saying there's something missing. It should say Mashlim B'Torah, as it says in the Brisa. Ve'im hishlim, but not in hishlim b'Torah. There was confusion here with the words. It should say banovi. So we've still got this point about if you did conclude, but it doesn't mean if you concluded with the Torah, because you really should conclude with the Torah. It should be 3331. But if you did conclude with the Novi 334, then that would be fine. That's what he means, im hishlim. So that we're keeping that, retaining the word hishlim, but changing the word Torah to Novi. And now this will tie up with what we've got in the Brisa. So ideally, this is what you should do. You should conclude with the posuk of the Torah. Now, notice there's a superscript on top of im hishlim banovi yotza. In mine, I've got a superscript letter Zayin. You may have the same with yourselves. That takes you across to the top, which tells you that you'll find that little Zayin in the Rambam. You'll find that in the Tur, in Orach Chaim. And that's really how we paskin, that ideally we should finish with the posuk of the Torah. And that's what we do, as we'll see some few examples in a moment. Says the Gemara, 5 lines, 5 wide lines down. Tanya Nami Hochi. In fact, we've got another independent brisa supporting what we've just said. Omer Rab Loza ber Rab Yossi. This is Rab Loza, the son of Rab Yossi. Now, he may disagree, but if he agrees, that'll be nice. Vosikin hoyu mashlimim oisa b'Torah. So that's nice. It's the son supporting the father, going further and saying not mashlim b'Torah. It's a praiseworthy thing to do. And you've got this word vosikin. Now, in mine, I've got a little circle, again, a superscript, if you like, with a line through the middle, next to the word vatikin or vosikin. I don't know if you've got that in yours. A small circle next to the word vosikin. No? No, you haven't got that small circle. You have. Malcolm's found it. Next to the word vosikin, there should be a small circle. Yeah? With an actual line through the middle of that circle. Very small. Got it? No, you haven't got it. All right, Peter, could you put out the Gemara I've sent, please? I tell you why you may not have it. Mine may be a more recent where they've added some extras. So you don't need to do that. If people can't find it, I'll tell you why it's not there.
Because it's from what was emailed, Peter. No,
it's not on Peter. Fine. I'll tell you what I've got. And I've got, actually, it is in brackets in mine. It's from a ksav yad, which means it's not normally found in the Gemara. Oh, you're putting it up. Thank you very much. And that will just confirm that what I've sent you is not actually by Vosikin. No, no, agreed. Thank you, Peter. So what I've got is I've got something additional in mine, but I'll tell you what it is anyway. It's a Rashi in Barachas Daf Tes Omid Beis. The Rashi in there says, now sorry, Peter, let's go for Barachas Daf Tes Omid Beis, where this word Vatikin comes up. What is the Vatikin? Now, normally you see in this country, in Israel, a Vatik means a senior citizen, and you don't have to be that old, and it allows you lots of extras, those people interested, particularly the Rav-Kav, which is the ticket to be able to travel the country on the transport. And it gives you a nice discount on that for a Vatik. So a Vatik normally means a senior citizen. Now, I don't know, Peter, have you got brachas for us? Let's have a look at brachas Daf Tes Omid Beis.
There's a different word from Daphne Vatikin, which with the sunrise. There's a phrase to govern Vatikin, isn't there?
Sorry, it's very unclear for me. I don't know. Oh, that's better. Yes.
To govern Vatikin, don't we say it's a Vatikin minion?
Yes. Quite right. Let's have a look at the Talmud. And we'll see how Rashi translate this. Let's go to brachas. Let's go for Daf Tes Omid Beis 9b. Let's go for Hebrew and English. Good. Okay, roll it down. And I think eventually we'll come across the word Vatikin. If you see it, just stop, give a shout. Keep going. Is it 9b? Keep going. No, Anani. This could be a long haul here. Keep going. Hold on. No, he's going to keep going. It's got quite a long way, I think. I'm just trying to get the Rashi here. Vatikin Hoyu. That's exactly, I think, what you're referring to. So keep scrolling down. 1 minute. Yeah, there. Oh, whoa. Now, I don't know if you've got that Kuvosikin there. Have you got, if you press and see if Rashi, I think it might actually be on the Mishnah, but let's see what we've got there. If you double press and then onto the commentary, what have you got? Hold on a minute. I'm seeing if I. What have you got? Hold on, I'm just coming up now. Vosikin. So let's go to Rashi. There we are. this is the point you were making about davening with vosikin, and these are people, anoshim anovim. Anovim is not grapes, that's with a base. Anovim with a vov from onov. Remember Ish Moshe, onov ma'od, humble, humility. Anoshim anovim umachabavin mitzvah. And that's what I've got around the side of my Gemara, the reference, which you don't got there. But anyway, I can tell you where it's from, and here it is. Vosikin are those people really doing as much as they can. They are humble people, machabavin mitzvah, loving the performance of the mitzvahs, and therefore going out of their way to ensure they're doing everything as well as possible. The real praiseworthy way of doing things. Davening Shema, as Mervyn mentioned, there are these people who daven vosikin. That means at the first light, at mamash sunrise, which, okay, sunrise around here is about 5:45. Now, where you are, it's a lot earlier than 5:45. And of course, you go further north, it's earlier still. And there are some people, and there is actually now a minyan, in case anybody's interested, they can't sleep, there's a minyan in Hagas, or Vosikin minyan, set up by Percy Met, people may remember. He's set up in case, it's quite important actually, sometimes you may want to catch a plane, and you want to done with a minyan, maybe saying Kaddish or whatever. And there is that minyan called Vosikin, which does really at the first opportunity, and that's called Vosikin, and that's what we're talking about here. Rashi's referring to.
Why does the word? What's the connection? I mean, the meaning of the word vatik is old, isn't it? So
I think it means full of experience, and therefore that's the point. The experience, therefore, allowing that person to do the right. The person's been around, done various things.
In this Talmud version, it translates the word as pious individuals.
Right. Where do you mean? Oh, I see we've got it there. Pious individual, that's quite right. In this translation that you've got up, it's pious individual who are scrupulous in their performance of mitzvot. Vatik. Interesting from this word.
I've got the Koran translation.
Oh, yes.
And it says, the origin of this term and even its exact meaning are not entirely clear. Apparently, its source is the Arabic watik, which means trustworthy. However, some associate it with Greek ethikos, which means somebody accustomed to something or straight. And then the Syrian translator of the book of Ben Sira translated vatik as somebody who's wise.
Oh, really good.
That's what it says here.
No, it's good. No, thank you.
So they could all have influenced the term as it's used in the Talmud as well.
Yeah, I mean, as I say here, it does normally mean we use that for experience, pious. Yeah, I mean, it's all those things that we say, and I say it's normally used. Perhaps the people here are expected senior people to be a bit more, sensible. So we say doing the right thing. And yeah, we talk about people being scrupulous in their performance of mitzvot. And how can we not just pass by having, you must have heard about Edelstein, who sadly passed away at the age of 100. And I think, this really would summarize him in every possible way. Let's go back to faces, please, Peter. If we had to use this word, vatikin, that certainly would apply to him. I mean, in every way. He was and I think that's the way you normally categorize the real greats. The real greats, and I think this is it. It's their learning, which is incredible, almost like unparalleled. But it's not just the mitzvahs bein odom lamokom. It's the mitzvahs bein odom lachavero. They go out of their way. Here he was 100 years old. Anybody needed any advice, and there were, everything was resting on his shoulders. It was almost like decision coming from him finally. But even on a personal nature, he may be in the middle of having his breakfast, and he would have people around his table, advice, whoever it was, doesn't matter who. At night, he could be stirred at any time. And this is really the hallmark of the real greats, Bein Odom Lamokon, Bein Odom Lachavero, in any way, feeling for other individuals, feeling not only their sorrows, but their happy times as well. Now, normally you say, Noseb Olam Chavero, attending when people, sadly, have lost people, but enjoying their simcha. And you could see in the face how we really felt so much for other individuals. And then there was a third point. And the third point was Bein Odom La'atzmai, which means between a man and himself, which means the humility, the absolute sincerity. He was worried about his own performance, but it wasn't just of mitzvahs. It was his midas tovos, the characteristics underlying him, that he was in control of everything, of every action of his. And that is, to say, the real hallmark of the greats, not just, as I say, it's right across. It's not just limited to one area. And I think that's where clearly people who had connections with him, and thousands did, that's what they would have said about him, that, in all areas, he was just incredible. And then, year 100, just a moment before he passed away, he was preparing a shiur, expecting to give a shiur. He gave a shiur the day before. And with his full faculties, of course, that's a wonderful blessing, at that age to be at full faculty, incredible. But then they had everything at their fingertips. But it's hard work. And I think that's the point which may be missed today, because there's so many, whether you're talking about AI, whether you're talking about Google, whether you're talking about anything else, it's all, the touch of a button, you've got all the information you want, but it's not collected in that hard manner of toil. It's toil. And I think, sadly, things are far too easy. Very easy to find any information you like, bombarded with information. You can have everything prepared for you, except for actually sitting and learning and using your own head and having the sweat and tears. And I think that's very much what all these
Amedas Bato is what you
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good. Yeah, Amedas Bato mean Omel, which means working. Look at the timetable of these individuals. It's incredible. Go back, I've seen the timetable of Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zatzal, who passed away not that long ago, just over a year. Their timetable in the 90s, where they were incredible what they were covering. Besides the fact that he had from 11 o'clock at night onwards, anybody can come and see him. He slept like 2 hours a night. It was 95, 6, something like that. But it was sweat. Everybody said, well, Reb Chaim knew everything, but it wasn't that. Maybe he did have a fantastic brain on top of it, which perhaps helps, but he was still doing that revision day in, day out. And you look at his timetable, he was covering everything. So in a whole year, he'd been through everything that we might have seen publicly. So what I'm saying is, it's not just that it comes naturally, it's that hard toil and labor. And that mustn't be forgotten, particularly if you're talking to younger people as well, where it's not necessarily the dumb thing to be putting in hard work. But yeah, that's what's got to be done. But I say it's Bein Odom La'Chavero, Bein Odom La'atzmo. So back to our Gemara, gentlemen.
I was going to ask one thing. What was his relationship between the person who died today and Rabbi Kanievsky and Rabbi Yasha? They're all three sort of very similar, weren't they? They had different statuses. They have different statuses in the. I'm
sorry, I didn't catch that again.
I'm saying, do they have different statuses within the non-Hasidic community?
Before him, you would have had Reb Chaim, you would have had, you're right, Reb Yashiv. The Reb Yashiv is normally considered the Posek Hador, the ultimate final decision maker on Psak. The title normally given to Reb Chaim was the Sar HaTorah, the ultimate in knowledge. Of course, he covered everything else as well, but that was his title. that it's interesting. You know, it's not you apply for this title, but it's everybody understands that's where you're coming from. With the recent passing away of Gershon Edelstein, he was really considered the Manhig Gadol, the leader of the generation, and the Rosh Yeshiva of the generation. And that's where, you know, it's difficult to make, you know, comparisons. What, you know, the specialities. But you know, he was considered the leader of the, and say with that incredible brain and perception, even at the age of 100, which was, you know, quite amazing. And the understanding. Let me just tell you one interesting thing about. I just saw Reb Chaim. There's a very interesting halacha mentioned about on Purim that with Megillas Esther doesn't have to all be written. It's not like a Sefer Torah. Megillas Esther, you can have half the words missing, and the Megillas Esther is still kosher. In other words, you can actually lane it half off by heart. That's the halacha learned from various psukim. Megillas Esther, it's not like a Sefer Torah. It's not like a mezuzah, tefillin. Words can be missing as long as you've got half. In fact, you need more than half. Less than half is no good. Says the Mishnah Berurah, very interesting halacha. What happens if you've got exactly a half there? Reb Chaim Kanievsky asked the following question. This is pre-computers. He says it can't be exactly half because there's an odd number of letters and an odd number of words. There can't be exactly half missing. That's a question, which means you've, you know, without a computer, that's in his mind. He sees the whole thing and says, there aren't exactly half. You can't have exactly half of Megillas Esther missing. So, you know, different categories, different planet, whatever you like. But, you know, these individuals, but it's very much repetition and doing and the toil that comes with all that as we move onwards. So I just mentioned that. And on we go. So Omer Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi. Have you got that? Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi? And let me just finish by saying people shouldn't be depressed. I mean, we hear about the greats and, you know, what they're doing and everything. We've got to do what we can do. And, you know, every person for their own particular pace, style, characteristics, they've got to concentrate. Yes, indeed, as we all know in the orchestra, yes, there is the leader of the orchestra. You've got the paper on the tim, you know, whether you're playing the double bass or whatever you're playing, the flute, everybody's got their role to play. So it's not, we need to be depressed, but we should try and remember, let's at least, as we also used to talk about, be world class at our number, I think is what people used to say. So whatever our number is, let's do the best we can with our faculties and our backgrounds and our whatever we are, and rather not being depressed, but at least let's see what these giants are about. So let's move on, please. Omer Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi. Vosikin hoyo mashlimin, there's that word vatik. Vosikin, thank you for that Rashi there in Brochus. Mashlimim osa b'Torah, they did. So that ties up very nicely with what we've said. There, Rabbi Yossi is saying that you could finish with a Novi, but ideally 3-3-3-1, and that's exactly what we do today. Says the Gemara. So you're telling me you could have 3-3-3-1. Agreed? According to Rabbi Yossi. Says the Gemara, Bishlama, it's all very well, Zichronos and Shofros. With Zichronos and Shofros, Ika Tuva. There are plenty of psukim in the Torah with the word Zikaron, Zeicher, Vayizkar, and the word Shofar. You find plenty of those in the Torah. Look at just at the Kabbalah Satorah itself with the Har Sinai, the word Shofar is mentioned. There are plenty of them. Ela Malchius Talos Hu Dahavian. The Gemara says This is, again, pre-computer, but the Gemara just knows there are only 3 times the word melech is mentioned in the Torah. So it's all very well for Rabbi Yossi to say, ideally, you should have 3, 3, 3, 1. You won't find that 1 if you're looking for melech. Have a look at Rashi quickly. Hoyu mashlimim b'Torah. Dahabelahu, says Rashi, arbo min ha-Torah, sholish b'tchila, 3 at the beginning, and 1 at the end, and in between you've got 3 from Tehillim, 3 from Nevi'im. So we've got Malchus, Zichronos, and Shofros. Rabbi Yossi is now telling us, ideally, you should have what the 4th, after 1 out of those sections will have to have a 4th pasuk. Ideally, it should be from the Torah. Says the Gemara, but there ain't any. We've only got 3 psukim in the Torah with the word melech in. What are you going to do? Says the Gemara, and now it reckons them out. Hashem Elokov imoy usruas melech bo. Either the word trua there means the sound, like the sound of a shofar, trua of a king. That's talking about Hashem. Hashem Elokov imo, with Klal Yisrael. Usuruas, the sounding, or it could come from the word rea, meaning friendship. And the friendship of the king is with him, meaning it, meaning Klal Yisrael, with Israel, is the friendship of that king, the King Hashem. That's one pasuk. Then we got Vayihi v'Shurun Melech, and there was in Yeshurun Melech, Vayihi v'Shurun Melech. Remember, right at the end of Azos HaBrocha. And the third one, we'll come back to that second one in a moment, Peter. So I would like you to, in a moment, if you don't mind, to put that pasuk up for us. I'll tell you where it comes from. Devorim 33:5. In a moment, and the final pasuk is like, we know that pasuk from the Shira, Hashem Yimloch Lo'olam. Hashem will be a king for eternity. Lo'olam void. We're familiar with that word, with that pasuk. Very good quiz question, actually. Hashem Yimloch Lo'olam void. It's actually said the most often in the day in davening. Good question. How many times do we say Hashem Yimloch Lo'olam void? Well, if you ignore Kriya Shema L'Mitah, which you've got the Hashem Yimloch Lo'olam void in that as well, but in actual davening, in Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, you've got 10 times you say that during the day. Quite amazing. But maybe worth people trying to work out what the 10 are. But anyway, you do say it 10 times. Of course, you say it in the Shira, in Chakris, you say it at the end of Olenu. There's lots of times you come across Hashem Yimloch Lo'olam void. So yeah, the Gemara is now telling us there are only 3 psukim with the word melech in the Torah. Peter, this pasuk by Vayihi v'Shurun Melech, if I can call upon you now, Devorim 33:5. Wow, excellent. Vayihi v'Shurun Melech. Remember, this is Bezos HaBrocha. Then God became king, or Vayihi was a king. Well, got an asterisk there, I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, Melech, B'Yisasef, when the heads of people, Yisasef Roshi, on the heads of the people, B'Yisasef, Lehit Asef, to come together, assemble. Yachad, the tribes of Yisrael, Yachad together, Yachad. If you can press, let's have a look at the Rashi on that. That is the middle possible, the third one, if you like. Let's have a look commentary of Rashi there. Thank you. Let's go to Hebrew first. Oh, good. By Hebrew, called B'Shurim Melech, Tomid Ol Machus Haleh. This word Yeshurim, from the word Yoshar. Yeshurim is normally talking about Klal Yisrael, Israel themselves, meant to be Yeshurim, Yoshar. B'Yisasef, the joining together, B'chol His Asef Roshei on, when they all come together. But if you can drop down and scroll down Roshei, B'Yisasef, Oh, here we are. That's the one I want. Bis asif, when they come together. Bis asfon yachad. Ba'agudo achas. V'sholom b'neihem. If there's peace, sadly saying halavai, peace between all of Israel, the coming together as one group, who Malcolm, then he is considered really their king, not when there is machlokas between them, something we really don't want, Shalom al Yisrael, and we can talk about that for a long time, but we won't. But yeah, the idea of Shalom constantly between individuals, a beautiful posuk that therefore means, when they come together, Yachad, notice the tip for those people into the Kinas underneath the word Yachad. Bisasev Roshe Om Yachad, all together. Shivtei Yisrael, all the tribes of Yisrael. Then you can really then say among Yeshurun, Yeshurun is a beautiful word for Klal Yisrael, for Israel. Then he really is their Melech. But yeah, back to our Gemara, please, Peter. Thank you. So where are we up to? We're trying to find this elusive fourth posuk, and we haven't got it. Rabbi Yossi says, ideally, you're meant to have 4 psukim from the Torah, finishing up with a posuk from the Torah. Says the Gemara, but there isn't one. But carry on the Gemara. Va'anan bo'inon eser. We would prefer 10, as we saw in the previous Mishnah. Ideally, you've got to have 10 psukim. What are we going to do? Omar Rav Huna. Says Rav Huna, I've got a braisa, in fact, a sefta, Tor Shema, from Rosh Hashanah. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Here Yisrael, Hashem, who is our God? Hashem is one. That counts as Malchus. It's true. It doesn't actually say the word Melech, but it's in court, it's everything. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's equivalent. Says Rabbi Yehuda, and we had him last week. Remember, he was very particular about these words. Remember, he didn't allow pokoid, not good enough. It's got to be yizkar. It's got to be the word shofar. True, it's not good enough. Here as well, Rabbi Yehuda says, sorry, I'm not allowing that. Eina Malchus. And that's very interesting, which means, therefore, that if you want your 10 Pesukim, you will not be able to get, we're using Shema Yisrael, you won't be able to get a 4th Pasuk. Says the Gemara, another suggestion. What about your dato? Hayom, you should know. Bring it back to your heart. Bring it to your heart. Ki Hashem hu Elokim Eino. There's no one else besides God. That's also Malchus. Divrei Rabbi Yossi. Says Rabbi Yehuda, sorry. Oimer Eino Malchus. You haven't got that word that we're looking for is Malchus. Okay. What about a 3rd chance? You've made known. I've shown, and talking here at the time of the giving of the Torah, Ki Hashem hu Elokim ein od milvado, no one besides him. That sounds pretty much like Melech Olam. Says the Gemara, that's Malchus. Divrei Rabbi Yossi. Says Rabbi Yehuda, I'm terribly sorry, Eina Malchus. Now, so we therefore find the following. Rabbi Yossi disagreeing with Rabbi Yehuda. He is saying, I want 4 psukim from the Torah. Rabbi Yehuda says there aren't any. You can't find the 4th. There are 3, but not 4. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda will say your 10th pasuk can't possibly come from the Torah. Whereas, if you remember Rabbi Yossi, he says, yes, it is. So if you're talking about this view, we found about this Vosikin would finish Malchus, Zichronos, and Shofars with a pasuk from the Torah. It can only be that they also subscribe to the view of Rabbi Yossi. And again, you've got some superscripts next to the word Shema Yisrael. That word Malchus has got a superscript in mind. I've got a little ches, Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, just before the Mishnah. So as a posuk of Malchus, you can use the word of Shema. Notice the superscript there. Notice on the next one, Yodato Hayoim, Ki Hashem Hu Elokim Ein Oid. I've got the word Malchus with another superscript, takes to the Shulchan Aruch. And the final one, Ein Oid Milvada, there's no one besides God. Again, that is an acceptable. Notice that superscript there. I've got a superscript next to the word Malchus. Hope others have too. I think you would have that in your Gemara just before the Mishnah. So interesting. That Yud takes us to, as you look around the side, it's in the Rambam, it's in the Shulchan Aruch, and that's how we paskin. And indeed, if we look at our Machzorim today, we will find the very last posuk we mention is Shema Yisrael. So clearly we do paskin like Rabbi Yossi, that's equivalent to Malchus, obviously the posuk, perhaps the most famous posuk of all, Shema Yisrael, and therefore that is an acceptable posuk. And indeed, as we've seen before, you want 10 and you want to conclude with the Torah rounding up all those psukim, and that's what we do today. And with that, gentlemen, we finish that Mishnah and the Gemara.
The ches in the Gemara, there isn't a ches by the side here, the Malchus.
Sorry, you got a little ches?
There is a ches in Masoras HaShatz, but that's referring to something else. It's referring to the Rif and the Rosh. There's a ches by the Malchus. I can't see what.
Okay, can you please now, Peter, put up the Gemara again? I'm sorry. Let's just see what we've got. Showing where.
I can see the ches. I can't see what it's alluding to.
No, the Gemara. The Gemara I sent. Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you. Just scroll down a bit. Let's just Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad Malchus. I've got that little, the superscript on the Malchus.
Yeah, I can see that, but I'm saying I can't see what the ches refers to.
Move to the top right.
What, their mitzvah?
Correct. Now, Ein Mishpat and their mitzvah.
Yeah.
Which means it comes from them. It means normal quotes from the Rambam or the Shtur Shulchan Aruch. And look at that little ches as you come down. Can you make it slightly larger for us, Peter?
Yeah, I see it's halacha. I didn't understand it. I thought it was a reference to a biblical quote. No.
No. If you find those superscripts.
Yeah.
Let's see what we get now. Pressing the OK. Woo. Okay. Oh, okay. You'll have to just move across. Move it across the page. If you can scroll. That's it. Thank you. So, yeah, that's very important. Can you see next to the little ches, you've got Lamed Ches. Lamed Ches means it's the 38th quote on the Perek. I've got Zayin Ches Tes Yud, because all those quotes in the Gemara come from the following source. Maimon, Shom, the Rambam there, Halacha Ches, there means like ditto. So if you follow up, it means it's from Perek Gimel. Halacha, you'll find that in the Rambam. And you also find that in the Tur, in Orach Chaim Shom, that's a ditto. So if you go up a couple of lines, you'll find that's in chapter Tov Kuf Tzadi Aleph, which is 591. And that's how we paskin in the Tur.
But why is it quite the Shulchan Aruch? Shulchan Aruch would have been the final.
Good one. Good one. Tov Kuf Tzadi Aleph. Quite right. Hold on. Good point. That's a good point. Tov Kuf Tzadi Aleph. Now I'm going now to a Shulchan Aruch. It's Tov Kuf Tzadi Aleph. Here we are. Tzorch es Musvei. Masor Psuk Shemalchis. Just 1 second. Malchis. Just a second. Sorry. Omrim aser psukim shel ches malchis. So, echod shel Yeah, you can attend. Okay, let's go now. Let's go now to the Shulchan Aruch. Sorry, as Mervin's raised this. So go now to Halacha. We want Orach Chaim. We want chapter 591. This is Rabbi Yosef Cairo, 591. We want paragraph 4. Oh, can we press the Hebrew and have it in Hebrew and English? Thank you. No, next one. Oh, you only got in Hebrew now. Try again. Yeah, that's the one. Yes, thank you. There we are. Omrim Yud Psukim Shel Malchias, V'Yud Shel Zichronis, V'Yud Shel Shofros, B'chol Bracha, Gimel Mehem Shel Torah, V'Gimel Shel Ksuvim, Gimel Shel Neviim, V'Echad Shel Torah. There's your last one, which is of the Torah. Now, you can only do that. It's true. It's not as explicit, but it's obviously you can understand where we're coming from. If you're going to have that final posuk of the Torah, you must be paskening like Rabbi Yossi. Good point, Mervin. You're quite right. On the side, it only mentions the Torah, which is the son of the Rosh, not the Shulchan Aruch himself, because the Shulchan Aruch doesn't spell it out. You'd have to understand that's what we're talking about. Look at the English way it correctly translated it here, and 3 from prophets, and then 1 of the Torah. Yeah. So if you're going to have then 1 of the Torah, you could only do that in Malchias if you were using Shema Yisrael. You with me? So that's how we paskin. Very good. So now let's go back to.
So what's the answer? Why it doesn't quote the Basilis Hashas at this time? I mean, the Nemet.
Oh no, because that's the point. It's not absolutely. It doesn't actually say that the.
Oh, so it's not clear in the Shulchan Aruch.
It's not as I mean, it comes to the same thing, but it's not actually meant. All it says is it doesn't say which posuk you should have. Put it like that. Well, go and search, and where are you going to find that last posuk? So you'll have to have.
Point. That means in halacha, if you want to, you sometimes have to go back before the Shulchan Aruch, go back. And,
you'd have yes.
Says, or
you just see mentioning. Just to see interesting, but no, so this is quite a good point because it doesn't tell you what that 4th one would have been. Of Sadi Aleph.
Okay.
Yeah, no, good point. Actually spell it. It's not spelled out. You'd have to see the commentaries on that to see what that was. Just a second. I wonder if there's anything more here. Below shows a prononis. No. Just seeing there's I've got the actual Shulchan Aruch in front of me looking through. Anything else? No. Yeah. Good point. Why the Shulchan Aruch doesn't actually spell it out for you? I don't know. Yeah, but we have got, and then of course he passes like Rabbi Yosef Rashai. If you wanted, yeah. Okay, very good. Let's go back. Yeah, Malcolm's got a question there.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. One, I don't quite get this thing about you're allowed to finish with something, but it's not. It's good if you finish with a verse from the Torah, but you have fulfilled your obligation if it's a verse from the Nevi'im. I don't quite get the
subtle so in other
distinction.
Words, no, the point is this: the bottom line is there's got to be 10 pesukim.
Yeah, but it actually says
so in
more
which
than
case,
that in the Mishnah, doesn't it? It says more than that.
No, what we're saying is that's what the Mishnah meant. You're right. The wording of the Mishnah without the Gemara, we wouldn't understand what was going on, and we'd end up with a contradiction. So what the Mishnah is saying is the lowest rung would be you've got to ideally, in fact, you could actually have just 3, but you can have, if you want 10 psukim and finishing up, because as you go through Torah, Ksuva, Nevi'im, finish off with a Nevi'im, but you ideally it really should be with the Torah. That's what we're saying is ideally. There is this point where you often find ideally you should do this, but if you want to do this, you'll still fulfill the duty. You find that with various things where there are, and as we've seen before, it's interesting, we mentioned this word vosikim. These vosikim, they're always trying to do the best possible, so they like to round it off with the possible from the Torah, but you don't need to. It's the
equivalent to, let's say, you can just do 30 calls of the shofar and you fulfilled your obligation, but it would be better if you've done 100 or something like that.
Yeah, good one. That's very, you're quite right. Absolutely. And the important, you're a very good point, because you need to know what happens if you can't actually fulfill now in that example of yours, you're going to a hospital and the person, must be a lot of people around, and you're going from place to place and you're trying to limit, and you're limited with time or whatever it is. It's important to know, you're quite right, ideally they're 100, but I've got to see 50 people I'm blowing for, so I'm now going to drop down to the 30, and that's ideal. It's not the best, but it doesn't matter, I've still fulfilled my duty. Quite right, absolutely. So you do, and the same thing here. Person can't remember the pasuk. Well, you've got your 10, fine, you get the tick. Ideally, it should. Now, don't forget, we're all used to machzorim. We've got the text, and we just go straight through it. If you haven't, it's all Baal Peh. In those days, there were very few people had it written down. That's why the importance of the Shliach Tzibur, particularly on Rosh Hashanah, somebody very capable. And that's why we mentioned this halacha about someone blowing the shofar and also being the Baal Tefillah, the Chazan, davening Musaf. Now, in those days, where you're trying to remember everything, plus all these 10 psukim for Malchus, Achronis, and Shofars, and you're blowing the shofar, it's quite easy to get to trip up. And if you're the main man, knowing, and you're going to forget yourself, and there's no prompts there. You need to know that, if you slipped up and you said 10 psukim, it's fine. Ideally, the last one should be, but that's a good point. So we do often find that another example we just saw today, the real ideal, and that's the Vosik, is davening with sunrise, davening Shema with sunrise. Now, as I mentioned before, sunrise, what time is sunrise today in London? Is it 4:30?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Well, that's praiseworthy. It's very nice and it's ideal, but most people are not quite there. But it's important.
It's 4:21 or 4:22 tomorrow if you want to go, anyone.
Anybody going for 4:22?
Everyone's cordially invited.
Cordially invited to Haggis.
Do they serve breakfast afterwards?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll give some a few sandwiches. We've already go back to bed, I would have thought. In case you ever do one, what they do, they start 27 minutes before that sunrise. There you are. Okay. No, but that's a good point, Malcolm. So you can see there are, you find the praiseworthy, the best way of doing it, but the other way for the, mere mortals, you can be Makai in the mitzvah of davening a little bit later too. And the same we mentioned here. Okay. Yep. We are at 11 o'clock. And we'll, let's just see the Mishnah and then we'll see what's in store. Ha'oiver lifnei hateva. How do you translate that? Someone who passes in front of the box. It's an interesting way. What does it mean, passing in front of the box? The box, the Oron, means the Oron Kodesh. Passing in front is the normal way of saying you're coming to daven as you approach from wherever your seat is. and you come and pass and you daven in front of the Oren Kodesh. B'Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah. And it seems from here that the minig, as we find today, is they had a different chazan, different Baal Tefillah for Shachris and Musaf on Rosh Hashanah. Because what we're saying, Hasheni Maskia, it's the second Baal Tefillah, not the person davening Shachris. You see, we want to have we'll see in a minute, where is the shofar going to be blown? Now, normally you'd think, Zrizin Makdim ila mitzvahs. Those people, zealous, they're keen, do the mitzvah as soon as you can. Why hang around and wait till Musaf to blow the shofar? So, interesting, the Mishnah says, Hasheni, it's only the second one, the second Baal Tefillah of the day, Maskia, causes the shofar to be blown. Again, it sounds very much like because he's davening, will be the one, depending up to his pace and everything else, he will allow then the Baal Tekeh to come forward and blow the shofar. As we said before, sounds like he wasn't the person doing that. But again, it's the second. Where do we blow the shofar? After Shachris, after laning, Musaf. What about Hallel? Where do we put Hallel? Do we put Hallel after laning? No. B'shas Hallel Horishin Makres HaMegillah. It's the first Baal Tefillah. It comes part and parcel of Shachris. If you're asked to daven Shachris on a day when Ubishas Hallel, notice it says, what does it mean, Bishah? At a time when there is Hallel. Now we're learning Gemara Rosh Hashanah. That's why it says Ubishas Hallel, because it's not relevant to Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara asks why not. We'll get to that. But when it comes to Hallel, Horishan, if you're asked to daven on Yom Tov and you're asked to daven Shachris, it will be expected that you'll be davening and saying Hallel too. Hopefully you've got the voice for it and the tunes up your sleeve, and you'll be davening Hallel, not the person davening Musaf. You could have, like we do with the shofar, have it as part of Musaf, and after the Amid of Musaf too, could have Hallel there as well. So the Gemara will deal with this point. Why, when it comes to the shofar, it fits with Musaf, whereas when it comes to Hallel, it fits with Shachris. Why the difference between the two? And I say that was whetting the appetite for next shiur, all being well. Now, we said next week there will be a week off, as